Edith, capital of the Calvard Republic, is a humble business. It was owned by Van Arkwright, a problem solver of sorts called a Spriggan. One day, a first-year student from Aramis Academy, Agnes Claudel, showed up at his door. She requested his help in finding antique orbments called the Genesees, which she inherited from her great-grandfather. Using his connections in normal society and the underworld, Van and Agnes found one of the Genesees only to come under fire from a mafia group called Almada. Despite the seemingly hopeless situation, the Genesis resonated with Van's Zypha, a tactical orbment, from which a little fairy named Mare appeared. With her help, Van clad himself in an armor of shards and transformed into the Grendel. He used its overwhelming strength to turn the tables. After that, Agnes agreed to work for Van part-time in exchange for his help in finding all 8 Genesees. The two of them traveled all across Calvard in search of them, and made a number of new friends along the way. Fairy Al-Fayed, a Jaeger who was raised for a life on the battlefield as a Kruger warrior. Aaron Way, a prodigy and a reckless leader of a group of delinquents from Longport's eastern quarter. Reset Twinings, a service concierge dispatched from the Marduk Company to provide Arkwright solutions with impeccable support. Katra Salesian, a young engineer stationed at the Basel Institute of Science, where he participates in the development of cutting-edge technology. Judith Lanster, a famous actress in the world of film who leads a double life as the phantom thief Grimcat. And Bergard Zeman, Van's former mentor, and a man who cast off his old name. Together, they braved countless ordeals and collected many of the Genesees. But they were hounded at every turn by Almada, who used the devices to sow confusion and chaos wherever they went. Eventually, Almada's leader, Gerard Dantes, detonated a nuclear weapon in a remote village and wiped it off the map. Multiple factions, now driven to bring about Almada's end, found themselves as pawns in a death game, where Van and his friends came out on top and ultimately defeated Almada's executives and cohorts. Then, they put an end to Dantes, the source of all this evil. However, during a festival celebrating the Calvardian Revolution, one of Almada's leaders, Melchior, unleashed pandemonium on the capital, reviving Dantes and the other executives and summoning countless devils in the process. Pandemonium brought Time and Edith to a standstill, but with the aid of their allies, Van and his crew were able to once again defeat Melchior and Dantes. Upon Dantes' demise, the diabolic core that he had absorbed into his body found its way back to Van, its original host. Van awakened as Vagrant's diaspora and disappeared, fleeing from his companions. Unwilling to lose their friend, the group chased him into the boundary between Zemuria and the Beyond and confronted the Demon Lord. Thanks to the urging of his friends, Van regained himself and temporarily drove the Demon Lord out by flinging the core into the depths of the rift. With all of these incidents behind them and the end of the year fast approaching, everyone other than Agnes bid a brief farewell to Van as they each left Edith behind. But before they departed, they all promised that they'd see each other again in the near future. Nearly 2 months had passed since Almada's defeat. Arkwright Solutions received an unexpected visitor at its door, Elaine Auclair. She came with a request regarding the activities of a mysterious crimson beast which bore a resemblance to Van's Grendel form. The two set out to investigate and eventually tracked it down, but the monster, called the Grendel Zonka, and its power of corrosion overwhelmed them, leading to their demise. However, when Agnes arrived on the scene, the Genesis she carried with her began to glow, causing time itself to rewind before them. Van and Elaine returned to an earlier point in the day and met with Agnes and Kincaid. Together with their help and that of the former assassins Swin and Nadia, who had come to the Republic on other business, they narrowly eked out a victory over the Grendel Zolga. The only clue gained was the supposed core of the 8th Genesis. Having left Swin and Nadia in charge of his business, Van headed to different regions to track down the device. Between Messeldom, the former haunt of Almada, and Longport, where a power struggle within Heiyue had ignited, the web of intrigue surrounding the Genesis fragments had begun to unfurl. Meanwhile, Harwood, an Anguis of Ouroboros, and mysterious twins were hatching a plot. Moreover, the Grendel Zolga's corrosive power coiled around the capital, and the scheming Garden Master pulled the strings from behind the curtain. Amidst all of this, Van and his friends, along with certain others, were invited to a resort on Nemeth Island by Harwood. The Oathbreaker arranged a series of deadly tours, which would reveal the hidden truths about the island. Van and his friends overcame many challenges, joining forces with allies and at other times being compelled to fight against them. They also helped Ren and Catra come to terms with their traumatic pasts. Then, at the 11th hour, the Garden Master, with the Grendel Zolga at his side, stole all but one of the Genesis. Thus began 3 very peculiar days in Edith. Ashen's attempt on Van's life, tragedy at the Z1 races, a standoff against the Church, an ambush by Marduk and the Kruga, and a military coup enveloping the whole of the capital. Each was a part of the Garden Master's plan, galvanized by a century-long obsession to twist the fabric of reality and rewrite history itself. But with the aid of their allies, including Professor Hamilton, one of Epstein's 3 disciples, they unraveled his insidious plot. In doing so, Swin and Nadia found some much-needed closure with regard to their pasts. Even still, other mysteries remained. Who was the Grendel Zolga? The creature at the end of the Garden Master's strings who carried out the corrosion at his behest. The answer came during the Aramis Academy Festival in April. Van received a single orb mail inviting him to Trion Tower. There, the Eschaton Saint appeared before him and used her power to open the way to the Oct Radium, allowing Van and his friends to enter. At the end of this alternate dimensional space created by the Genesis, they finally confronted the mysterious man at the heart of the Grendel Zolga, learning both his shocking identity and the truth behind the 8th Genesis. After a battle spanning time, space, and causality, Van and company took back the power of the Genesis that had been stolen from them, freed their client and friend, and bid the farewell they never got to say.
The tower's observation deck is currently closed for routine maintenance. We look forward to your next visit.
The first day of the Aramis Academy Festival has drawn to a close, and it will continue for another 2 days. Large crowds are expected, so if you plan on attending, we recommend going by train or public transit. Oh, and this just in, we are now learning that President Gramhart will be making an important announcement tomorrow. There's no need to be alarmed, though, as no serious incidents have occurred. We are not at liberty to share all the details, but, yes, we can pass on some of what we heard.
That was much sooner than I anticipated. Professor Cronkite never disappoints. Actually, this may be owed to President Gramhart's leadership.
Hey, Dingo. I promise I'll do my very best. So don't worry. I'll be fine.
Professor Hamilton, I leave the rest to you.
Construction continues in the Ishgal Mountains on the eastern side of the Republic. And it appears that we will be getting an official announcement of Zemuria's first Space Force base.
You sacrificed everything for this, Dingo. We are forever in your debt. Thanks to you, we might just make it in time.